Animations in games are appreciated, but sometimes the players leave out some of the elements from the animation to talk about, and one of them is the fire element. In a game, a fire element or weapon which you just fired is one of the most sought after, but also, since it does not guarantee lethal attack, it's also sometimes forgotten. Today, in this video, we've brought you 10 examples of realistic fire mechanics in video games. Let's start by going from the top 10 to top most. Enjoy. Number 1. Red Dead Redemption 2. It's still one of the most graphically stunning games available. All of the special effects are fantastic. The ocean is beautiful and the storms and lightning are spectacular. The fire, of course, is incredible. The way fire spreads and builds up is surprisingly detailed and realistically modeled, and it's one of those things you have to stop and appreciate because the game never really draws your attention to it in the way that other games in this list do. But it's one of those things that you have to stop and appreciate because the game never really draws your attention to it in the way that other games in this list do. Here's an excellent example. If you throw a guy on the ground next to an open flame, their limb will catch fire and spread slowly until they're completely consumed in flames. Other flammable objects, such as wooden houses, can also catch fire. You can't create a forest fire in this game, but the amount of granular precision in the way that it spreads is astounding, just as it is with lower scale Infernos. We have no way of knowing how realistic any of this is. Number 2. Battlefield 1. Now, if you're going to build a game set during World War II, it's only natural that your flamethrowers and flame effects look amazing. And yes, in this game, this stuff looks incredible. The flamethrower, as we know it, makes its first major appearance during World War I, and this game makes extensive use of it with both handheld flamethrowers and flame tanks, both of which can be extremely lethal in the proper hands. The way that the flame spreads isn't nearly as realistic or detailed as something from Red Dead, but it still looks fantastic. And in general, fire plays a significant role in this game. Things appear to be catching fire all over the place. And despite the fact that it's primarily for show, it looks fantastic. DICE is known for its spectacular explosion and fire effects, and they're really showing their effects muscles here. There's nothing here that particularly realistic or amazing in terms of mechanics, but it all looks fantastic and is well worth mentioning. Number 3. Tomb Raider series. It's easy to overlook the importance of fire in Crystal Dynamics' and Eido 2 Montreal's Raider series, especially in the first and second games. You're continually putting things on fire and burning them. There are several scenes that revolve around the fire. The game enjoys burning things, and it works well both in terms of effects and mechanics. There aren't really simulation games. They're big budget action games, but the way you solve riddles with fire is usually rather imaginative and entertaining. It starts out innocently enough, like when you're burning ropes in the first game before blowing up the entire opposing base with fire arrows on methane gas vents. The second game contains a whole underground level loaded with puzzle-solving items such as these Greek fire barrels. And while all of that is wonderful, there are a lot of great small flame elements in this series. Like stuff like that when you're crawling through a tight room and the flames interact with the ceiling rather than being a static effect. There are so many different ways to use fires in this series, and they all look fantastic. Except for a few minor aesthetic characteristics, there's nothing really simulation like it about it at all. You're not going to ignite a forest fire here, but the developers' use of fire in the puzzles and battle is a lot of fun. Number 4. Uncharted 3. Both the Chateau fire sequence in Uncharted 3 and the burning restaurant boss in The Last of Us include realistically expanding flames that provide an undetectable time constraint to the portion. They're also highly detailed and lifelike in appearance. Yes, they're scripted, but few games feature fire as realistically as these. It's certainly top class in terms of how it spreads and burns in the surroundings around it. This is the kind of thing that could only be done by Naughty Dog's detail-obsessed, obsessive pokes working really hard on it. The Chateau segment happened first, and it's a far more spectacular wild escape in which you're shooting at adversaries, dodging flames, and jumping all over the place. Number 5. Divinity Original Sin 2. In contrast to many of the games that we discussed thus far, Divinity 2 is more concerned with creating chaotic simulations and forcing players to deal with them. The world is made up of many different elements that interact with one another. And of course, you got it. Fire is one of the most deadly and unpredictable. And what sets this game apart from other tactical RPGs is how out of hand it can go. In this game, fire can be quite harmful. It all spreads realistically, and when you mix it with the liquid physics of something like a shattered container of oil, you've got a disaster just waiting to happen. It's not unusual to see a whole battlefield engulfed in flames here. Number 6. Alone in the Dark. Because a list like this wouldn't be complete without including this strange horror game released by Atari back when they were still alive, this was a significant shift as it attempted to transform Alone in the Dark into a horror action film epic with a large soundtrack, large set pieces, and spectacular fire technology. In this game, dealing with opponents and solving riddles requires the use of fire, and it's clear that the creators spent a lot of time and effort to make the way fire spreads and burns objects look as realistic as possible. Any flammable surface that comes into contact with fire will slowly burn, char, and eventually collapse in a pleasing manner. Number 7. Little Inferno. It's like a strange little indie game from 2012, and the premise is as simple as it gets. You have a small furnace, and once you use it to burn items, you just throw everything in here and light it on fire. So the game is basically the same as the fire simulation. The effects are pretty spectacular, but the stuff burns to a crisp rather quickly. Everything burns differently depending on what it is, which is wonderful because viewing the fire effects and letting things burn is the main goal of the game. It's not particularly perplexing or difficult, rather it's a lighthearted, lizard brain-like diversion. You drop stuff in the furnace and burn them. Number 8. Far Cry 2. Instead of being weak, close-range weapons like they are in most games, flamethrowers are the ultimate tool of death in this one. Simply ignite a little wildfire and watch as the flames sweep across an entire enemy camp. The level of simulation in this game is insane. It was so powerful that the makers decided to make future games' flames weaker. They're still powerful, but not to the extent that they were in Far Cry 2, where a single spark might start a forest fire. It's really powerful, and it looks beautiful as well, burning everything to a crisp. The trees in this game look especially cool as the fire spreads to the leaves. Then it transforms into a strange, wild, terrible tree fire. But seeing these kinds of realistic flames in an open world game was incredible. Number 9. Noida. This small roguelike may not appear to be very impressive at first glance, but its pixel art graphics conceal the incredible modeling of elements. Every pixel in this game is physically simulated, which adds to the craziness. So it's basically Divinity 2 on steroids, as we previously stated. Depending on what it interacts with, the ground can crumble, water can flow, and fire can spread quickly. In this game, the fire looks very stunning. It's almost addictive to watch it spread, especially when you come across a large puddle of oil or another flammable substance that will burn up in seconds. In this game, playing with fire is a lot of fun, even if you spend half of the day dead. Number 10. Teardown. It doesn't get much better than this when it comes to fire. They plunge you into a full voxel world that's completely destructible and tear down. It's entirely up to you how you shatter things, but when you combine devastation with fire, you've got something truly special. Because it's all mechanics, fire spreads and destroys everything in this game in a very stunning way. The simulation is so realistic that it can even make the most powerful computers chug when the fires get out of hand. However, it appears to be so fantastic that it's difficult to be critical.